This is Washington, D.C., the capital and the only federal district of the United States. And over here is the state of Washington, located in the Pacific Northwest. Looking at the map, you'll notice both places are named after the first president of the U.S., but they're on opposite sides of the country. Even many U.S. citizens mix these two up, so it's no surprise if people who don't live here get confused. So, if you've ever wondered, why name a state Washington and cause confusion with the capital? Well, that's perfectly understandable. In the U.S., it's not uncommon for places to share the same name, but Washington is special because it's named after one of the country's founding fathers, George Washington, the first president of the United States. Let's take a quick look back at history. After gaining independence from Britain in 1783, the U.S. needed a neutral capital, not part of any state, to avoid power struggles between the states. The U.S. Constitution, drafted in 1787, gave Congress the power to create a federal district, no larger than 10 square miles, to serve as the nation's capital. President George Washington chose a spot along the Potomac River, between the states of Maryland and Virginia, as a neutral location between the northern and southern states. In 1790, Congress passed the Residence Act, officially establishing the capital. The district was named the District of Columbia in honor of Christopher Columbus, the explorer credited with discovering the Americas, and the city itself was named Washington to honor President George Washington, who played a key role in selecting its location. Meanwhile, Washington State, located in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S., has a history tied to the westward expansion of the country. In the early 19th century, this area was a hotspot for disputes between several European nations, including the U.S., Britain, and Russia, all of whom wanted control over the Pacific Northwest, where the state of Washington is today. In 1818, the U.S. and Britain agreed to jointly manage this region, which was called Oregon Country at the time. However, in 1846, the two nations signed the Oregon Treaty, splitting Oregon Country along the 49th parallel. The U.S. took the land south of that line, which included what is now Washington State, while Britain retained the northern part, which is now Canada. Here's something interesting. Before Washington became the 42nd state in 1889, it was initially going to be called the Territory of Columbia, named after the Columbia River, the major river running through the area. However, the name Columbia clashed with the District of Columbia, the nation's capital. So, the proposal was made to rename the new territory after President George Washington. At this point, you might wonder, why didn't they want it to be called Columbia, but then they named it Washington, which still ends up clashing with the capital's name? Couldn't they have picked something else? Back then, naming the new state after George Washington had strong political significance and showed deep respect for the country's first president. Even though Washington, D.C. already existed, the new state was on the West Coast, far from the capital on the East Coast. Given the vast distance, it was thought that there wouldn't be much confusion. Also, by the late 19th century, the name Columbia had already become quite common, with many towns and places across the U.S. using it. So naming the new state Columbia wouldn't have felt unique enough. In the end, Washington was chosen for its symbolism and distinction. We already know the history of how Washington, D.C. was formed. But why hasn't Washington, D.C., the capital of the U.S., become the 51st state? In a 2016 referendum, the city's voters supported statehood with an overwhelming 86% in favor. But the main reasons D.C. isn't a state yet come down to two key factors: history and politics. First, historically, Washington, D.C. was created for a very specific purpose. When the Founding Fathers were designing the political system of the U.S., they wanted the capital to remain independent of any state. They feared that if the capital were part of a state, that state could hold too much power and influence over the federal government. So, in 1790, the District of Columbia, D.C. was established as an independent territory, not governed by any state, to ensure neutrality and balance of power between the states. However, today, the reality is that D.C. residents still have to follow federal laws and pay federal taxes, but they don't have full representation in Congress. This has sparked heated debates, with many arguing that D.C. deserves to become the 51st state to ensure full citizen rights, including the right to vote for senators and representatives, just like other states. So, why hasn't this happened? Politically, it's much more complicated. If Washington, D.C. were to become a state, it would have voting representation in both the Senate and the House. With most D.C. residents leaning Democratic, adding a new state could shift the balance of power in Congress, especially in the Senate, where each state has 2 senators. This has led to strong opposition from Republicans, who fear it would weaken their political influence. That's why efforts to make D.C. the 51st state have faced significant resistance, and so far, haven't succeeded. Washington, D.C. holds a unique position. It's not just the capital of the United States, but also home to the most powerful institutions of the federal government. All 3 branches of the U.S. government are based in this district. The White House, where the president works, the Capitol, where laws and policies are made, and the Supreme Court, the highest judicial authority. Along with these, there are numerous federal agencies like the Pentagon, the Department of State, and the Department of the Treasury. But it's not just about the government. Washington, D.C. is also the headquarters for many important international organizations. For example, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the Organization of American States, OAS, are all based here. This makes D.C. a global hub for diplomacy and finance, attracting thousands of international officials, investors, and experts every year. In terms of population, Washington, D.C. is home to about 700,000 residents. That may not seem like much compared to bigger cities like New York or Los Angeles, but what's interesting is that on weekdays, the population swells to over 1 million as people from nearby areas like Virginia and Maryland commute into the city for work. Economically, the city relies heavily on services and tourism, with so many international organizations, law firms, and financial corporations headquartered here. Government-related services, legal services, and finance play a huge role in the local economy. Tourism is also a major driver, thanks to DC's historical landmarks and famous museums, like the National Museum of Natural History, the Lincoln Memorial, and the National Mall. When it comes to Washington State, we have to talk about Seattle, the largest city in the state, and a major hub for technology, commerce, and culture. Seattle offers a unique blend of cutting-edge technology and stunning natural surroundings, with plenty of outdoor activities like hiking, boating, and mountain climbing. Besides Seattle, there are also other notable cities like Tacoma and Spokane. Tacoma is a key port and industrial center, known for its vibrant arts and cultural scene. Spokane, located in the eastern part of the state, is famous for its natural beauty and a variety of outdoor activities, from skiing to hiking. Economically, Washington State has a diverse and thriving economy. The tech industry in particular is a major pillar, with global giants like Microsoft and Amazon headquartered here. The aerospace industry also plays a critical role, with Boeing, one of the world's largest aerospace companies, having its main operations here. Washington is a hub for airplane manufacturing and aerospace research. In addition to technology and aerospace, the state has a strong agricultural sector, especially in apple production. Washington is the largest apple producer in the U.S. Other key agricultural products include wheat, grapes, used for winemaking, and seafood, all of which contribute significantly to the state's economy. Finally, even though they share the same name, Washington, D.C. and Washington State are completely different in terms of location and role. Washington, D.C. is the political heart of the U.S., home to the most powerful government institutions, while Washington State, with Seattle and its high-tech cities, plays a crucial role in the economy of the West Coast. The confusion between the two will likely continue, but that's part of what makes the history, culture, and story of these two Washingtons, on opposite ends of the country, so interesting and unique. Thanks for watching the video. If you found the content helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on any new videos.